So the world sure is a strange place right now. You got a new administration, lots of new executive orders, and a lot of new policies going into place. What is that going to mean for the economy? What's that going to mean for your 401k? What's that going to mean for you and your finances? That's what we're going to cover today. I'm here with St. James, and we are going to unpack this entire thing on how the world is going to have to conform. My name's Chris Naugle, and this is What Now? What's next?
For your money. We've had a lot of changes going on within the past 5 days. We've seen markets completely swing from one particular like low end to almost a high end. And then on top of that, we've got eggflation happening all over again. So are you familiar with what's going on with eggflation right now?
No, actually tell me.
Okay, so what's happening right now, as of whatever day it is in January, there is another bird flu that is sweeping all the way through the United States. And as a result, if one particular chicken gets hit with this particular bird flu, it wipes out the entire stock that's carried within that barn. So there is like literally a plague happening amongst chickens, which is now affecting the egg prices that we see at the grocery store.
And the price of chicken.
And the price of chicken, and.
Do you know that chicken is the #1 thing that the U.S. exports?
I didn't know that, no.
I think it's
got to be up there. It's got to
Actually,
be at least one of the top 10.
fact check that, actually.
Because people understand things fluctuate, which is pretty good. But here's another thing. Do you know why chickens are one of the most valuable commodities, or if you want to call it commodity, in America?
I do not.
So for people who like this and people who don't like this, vaccines. Because we actually use chickens and we use eggs, more importantly, to help develop vaccines for our particular vaccine reserves. Now, I know vaccine is a very, very hot topic for a lot of people, anti-vax, pro-vax. Let's just agree that we develop vaccines that we can sell to other countries. Let's just look at it at a purely financial basis. Chickens are important, especially if you're trying to eat and grow strong. I know you're not too concerned about chickens, but that's something that we have to be concerned about, because eggflation and all types of inflation is basically like a hidden tax that's amongst Americans. Could you explain how inflation is that?
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about inflation. So a lot of people think inflation is, the cost of goods just went up, but it's really not. It's the dollar buys less. Mm-hmm. So as they print more and more money, as the Fed authorizes the Treasury to print more money, which you obviously know in the last administration, they went bonkers with printing. So as
both administrations.
Good point.
Both
administrations, but heavily swayed in the last administration.
Okay.
Got to put that little in there. Okay. But anyway, as they printed money, every time they print a dollar, it's got to get value from somewhere. So it takes its value from our current dollars in circulation. So therefore, our dollars just become less valuable, meaning that we need more of them to buy the goods and services. So it appears that they cost more, but it's really not. It's just a hidden tax, as you mentioned. So that's inflation for you.
Yeah, and the thing is that Americans from every walk of life, because a lot of people feel that, oh, well, the rich can stomach this, the middle class can stomach this, people on social assistance can stomach this. No, the fact is that inflation hits every single person on earth.
Absolutely.
From whatever sector that you're in.
Including the U.S. government.
Exactly. And now what we have to do, because we're dealing with not money, but currency, is find more ways to have more of our cash flowing in to offset all of these expenses. How can we create things to offset all of this inflation so that our dollars are always coming in more towards us?
Well, the answer is always the same. It's keep your money in motion. Money's always got to be out there working for you. But I think the way we're taught that money works is we trade hours for dollars, and then we take our money and we put it in the traditional sources, whether it's a bank account or a 401k, and we just leave the money there. 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and we feel good as we start seeing that balance go. But as the balance is going up, it's typically not even keeping pace with inflation. Maybe the 401k, but then if you've paid attention to the markets don't always go up. And that's the problem right now. So many people are literally living in a fake reality of the markets only go in one direction, because a lot of the people investing money, the younger folks, they've never seen a recession. but they're about to, because we're about to enter a recession. There's no way we're going to avoid that. And because of this FOMO is the only thing I can call it, the fear of missing out, they just keep plowing money in. But if you then take your eye off of the public and you look at the big money, Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett, all of the big hedge funds, they're moving money out of the market at alarming rates and keeping that money sitting on the sideline in T-bills, treasury bonds, and cash, waiting for this opportunity to unfold. Because listen, there's always somebody selling and there's always somebody buying. But pretty soon, the people that are buying today are going to be the sellers in the future, but they're going to be selling at a loss. The people who are really going to benefit are the elites, just like they always do.
Yeah, it was interesting because I saw some videos today about how Warren Buffett is exiting out of a lot of positions. And for people who, may not know what that is because it's industry talk, it means they have a stock portfolio. And in that stock portfolio, let's say they have Exxon, Palantir, and Peloton. Well, what they're doing is they're leaving these positions. They're leaving the investments that they have there and selling that to hold on to the cash value that these things are worth. And why are they doing that? It's because they're feeling like, look, all of this money that we've plowed into the markets is overvalued. We're seeing that even more just currently right now with what happened to NVIDIA. Now, NVIDIA last week had a huge pullback. And that's because a Chinese competitor just came in and has been able to develop a artificial intelligence program, software, that is done at a fraction of the energy cost and a fraction of the computing power. This whole thing developed because the US only exports a limited amount of super chips that power these AI large language models over into China. Because we want to compete we want to maintain our competitive advantage with other foreign partners. That's basically that's the market's at its best. Well, with those reduced levels of computing power, they were like, well, how can we develop something just as good? And that's what they were able to do. So, Chris, do you deep speak?
Deep speak?
Do you
only when I'm asleep?
DeepSpeak is now the Chinese competitor to ChatGPT. What it is a large language model that is basically set up with a fraction of the computing power that's needed to fund a lot of these large language models, basically these GPTs and all that, all this AI. This is actually unstabling the markets. What do you think is going to be a long-term effect as China is becoming more and more of a competitor in this tech space?
Same as it's been. Competition is typically a good thing. I don't think that's really so much the problem, is that China is developing technology that rivals what we may have or NVIDIA has. I think the real problem is the consolidation inside the indexes. So if you really focus on just the S&P 500, for example, it is literally largely, 60+% of the performance of the S&P is from 10 stocks.
That's right.
Not 500. And it swayed very much on these 10 stocks. Actually, about 8 of them are really driving factor, and NVIDIA is one of them. So what you have happening is everybody wants to bet on the winners, right? It's just like everything else, like football or horse racing, everybody's betting on the winners. So you've got all this money from the retail investors and institutional investors piling into these 10 or even 8 stocks, and that's driving the S&P's performance. But what happens when the market shifts? What happens when NVIDIA starts to, have trouble because now they got competition? Well, all those buyers turn into sellers, and it drives the market down incredibly fast, which is what you're starting to see now. And a lot of people are like, oh, Bitcoin. Bitcoin and the markets are very correlated. So when Bitcoin's going up, the market's going up, or vice versa, the market's going up, Bitcoin's going up, the same when it's going down. You can go back in the history and you can follow that. So what do the wealthy or the elites know that we don't? Well, they know patterns, they know cycles, and all they're doing is preparing for the next cycle. And the next cycle is the winter season. Okay, we are going to enter a declining economy. It's already happening. It's just the news won't report it. You're already starting to see the markets show instability. They're showing consolidation. And when did this happen before? I covered this in another YouTube, but it happened right before the Great Depression. The same kind of consolidation. All the money always flows into the winners, but that happens during these cycles. And the problem right now, I think more so than any other time in history, maybe similar to the Great Depression, is everybody thinks the markets just keep going up. And they think that the Fed is going to step in every time the markets start to fall back, which they have. During the pandemic, what'd they do? $5.2 trillion of printing, hence inflation. Then what'd they do to combat inflation? Jacked interest rates up. cut back on how much money's in the system. They literally hooked the vacuum cleaner up to the markets and sucked all the money that back out. And they do that by unwinding their balance sheet. So all these things are what the elites and the wealthy know that the average person doesn't. The average person just watches the news, sees the market going up, gets excited, FOMO kicks in, they dump money into the market. Then when the market flips and starts going down, they get scared, fear kicks in, they sell, and who buys? Warren Buffett, who's sitting on billions and billions of dollars in cash. He just goes in and cleans house.
Exactly, and I think you touched on a lot of key things here. We know that President Trump is a very, very pro-capitalist type of administrator, probably the most ever in history. The question I recently had with one of the followers is, are higher interest rates going to help or hurt the economy? Are lower interest rates going to help or hurt the economy? And what are the arguments, both pro and con, for each?
So higher interest rates are good for inflation because it costs more to buy things. So therefore, most people, from a psyche standpoint, they won't buy something just to buy it because they're thinking, okay, well, interest rates are high, and they always are hoping rates go down. But now, if the Fed keeps dropping rates, which Trump said he's acting like he's the Fed, saying he's going to drop interest rates, but the Fed has to drop interest rates. As they do that, it makes money cheaper, which it stimulates the economy because now people will go out and buy things, they will refinance things. All that stimulation is very positive for the economy. However, you got this fine balancing. You've seen inflation ticking back up. I mean, then it came down a little bit. I mean, we're not even going to get into that, but inflation is ticking up. The tariffs, when those finally go in force, that is inflationary for sure. Price of goods will go up, and then it's going to take at least a year, maybe 2 years, for that to kind of unwind where the tariffs are actually a positive thing. So when you're looking at all this stuff, I think the simplest thing to say is stop thinking everything is going to go up and start realizing that you got a finite balancing act, and we're not going to win the balancing act.
So how you touched on that tariffs are actually going to be a good thing in the long term after 2 years. So we have to kind of rip the Band-Aid off, feel the pain for a little bit, and then it's going to heal. So for a lot of people who are anti-tariff, I'm anti-tariff. Why are tariffs good after 2 years?
Why are you anti-tariff?
I don't want to pay more for goods, and I'm fine with
It's the same reason everybody watching this is anti-tariff. They don't want to pay more. But everything was costing more under the last administration when there were, the same tariffs were in place.
But that was, wait. Well, let's look at a few different correlations because we got to pull a few things back. Trump implemented tariffs on washing machines coming from Asia. And what happened is not only did the price of those imported washing machines go up, but also the price of dryers went up as well. And then not only that, but the domestic manufacturers, Whirlpool and Maytag, if they are actually domestic, they said, well, if there's this much margin to be developed that we can gain from, they drove their prices up as well. So at the end of the day, the US consumer just had to pay more money. So what happens subsequent to that? What is the fallout from that it actually works out?
All right, so you're talking about corporate greed, and you're absolutely going to see that. You're going to see U.S. companies trying to take advantage of this because foreign companies like, Chinese he's not talking about big tariffs in China now. He's kind of gone from 60, and now we don't even know where he's going to be at, but he's definitely talking 25%, Canada, Mexico, and a lot of others. So nonetheless, tariffs are inflationary because they will increase the cost of goods. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So what's the pro to that? Well, yes, we got to rip the Band-Aid off. It's gonna hurt, but then in a couple years, what'll happen is the same thing that happened back in the 80s. Now, I don't know how many folks watching this, remember the 80s, but Japan started making cars and flooded the US market with these very efficient, Japanese, inexpensive cars. And then what happened? Well, that the US, and the US manufacturers started really pushing back, and they imposed tariffs on Japan. So could you tell me what happened with the rest of that story? Today, you look at the manufacturers of the Japanese cars, from Honda to Toyota and all the others, where are they manufactured?
Nissan has one of the largest factories in America, in Tennessee, actually. And Toyota also has manufacturing here in the United States as well.
And Honda?
And Honda, Honda has manufacturing here as well.
But they didn't in the 80s. Everything was manufactured in Japan, shipped over on trucks. I remember the ads showing airplanes dropping cars out of them. But so you can see what happened there. Japan, opened factories here. So when they open factories here, that's a huge investment in the U.S. economy. That's a huge need for U.S. employees, and it increased employment.
But now that we have more people employed, there's going to be more money basically being used by
You're
more
assuming people are going to maintain employment. You're assuming that as the economy softens, as all this happens, as we get closer into a recession and end up in a recession, you're making the assumption that unemployment rates are going to stay the same, which is not going to happen.
Okay, so employment's going to dip, and then employment's going to go back up.
Unemployment rates are already going up. They're just not reporting it. They don't want us to
unemployment is going up.
Unemployment
okay,
is going
so
up.
unemployment is going up, but we're going to talk about 2 to 3 years in the future, where in 2 years, these factories are going to be built. Whatever these particular things are that we're going to be importing from
They'll
China.
commit to building them.
They'll commit to
just
building
like the Saudis, I think, committed to a couple $100 billion, and Trump's saying he wants to get them to $1 trillion investing into the U.S. economy.
What are you about to do?
I don't know. I'm just.
Oh, okay.
These are just surface level things that I'm seeing.
What I'm concerned about is that it sounds kind of counterintuitive, because if we have a super large workforce that actually contributes to inflation. Have you ever heard about that principle?
That is inflationary. Yeah, more people that are employed, and all of that stuff's
no matter what, it's going to be inflation.
Right now the spotlight, it's like we got this little narrow spotlight on inflation, like that's the big thing. But now we got this narrow spotlight on tariffs, and it's all, they just keep saying bad, because all we do, and listen, I'm no different. We just focus on what's best for us now, and we think, okay, tariffs are going to increase the cost, so that's not good for me, so I'm anti-tariff.
Right.
But we're not looking just a couple years down the line and remembering what happened in history every time tariffs were used for this type of thing. It's always positive for the economy. Very positive for the economy in the long run, because it makes foreign investments come to the U.S. So they have to open factories here. They have to bring money here. They have to invest in the U.S. The U.S., no matter what you're going to say about BRICS or anything else, the U.S. is still the powerhouse. And with Trump, who he's very, very pro-American, and some of the things, like what he just did in Davos, holy crap, he's just literally telling them this is what it's going to be.
So explain what happened with Colombia, because a lot of people don't know the full picture about that situation. So what happened?
The Davos, where he came on? Is that what you mean?
No. What happened with Colombia with the mass deportation and the whole financial incentives and all that stuff? Because he was about to hit them with the tariff. Have you heard about that?
No, actually, why don't you tell me?
So what happened really
There's so
quickly?
much news, I can't keep track of it all.
Exactly, and unfortunately, I got to keep up with all of it. What happened is basically there was mass deportation. A lot of people were being flown back to Colombia, but they were basically put in on military planes. And Colombia said, we don't want that. As a matter of fact, you know what? Now we're going to hit the U.S. with a whole bunch of tariffs. And now...
So now our coffee is going to go up? Son of a bitch!
But wait a minute. It gets different. Not better, not worse, but different. He says, look, these are humans. You bring them in on regular planes, fine, we'll take them back. Yes, the Colombian president did cave. It was a victory for Trump in that particular sense, because one, he got the people back into Colombia. Two, all these economic sanctions, because remember, Colombia, about 30% of their economy is based in the US. They need to be able to send stuff to the US. They need to send
The same
coffee.
could be said for almost every single country.
They need to be able to send crude oil. They need to be able to send everything. So the question becomes is this overall a big win? Did you get people out of, for people who are, fine with the mass deportation? I know that's a bit of a touchy subject. I'm gonna try and keep it for dollars right now. Was that a good thing? And this was the full win, because now Trump got what he wanted. He got the fact that he got the people out of the country. There's no trade war that's going to blossom between the US and Colombia. But the question is, how do you think other countries will follow, and what countries have the best chance of standing up to a situation like that?
I think the countries that would stand up to the U.S. would maybe be, the EU, but I think they would cave because they're not doing so good. Definitely China. China will definitely stand up. South Korea will probably stand up, and Russia, but I don't know how much Russia will stand up. So it's interesting. I've read a lot about this, and I've read so much that it kind of just gets all jumbled. So when you really think about how all these other countries and the other leaders are going to react to Trump and what he's doing, it's probably going to be everybody's going to follow the leader. Okay. I think there'll be a couple standouts, China being one of them. But I think for the most part, most countries will just get in line because they all need the United States. They need the U.S. economy. They can't even survive without the United States of America. Trump knows this. He is definitely putting his best foot out there, and he's definitely using the strong, long stick, I guess is what you'd say.
Right.
Which, I don't know. I have varying, views on that. I'm not going to say everything Trump's doing I agree with. Is it really that important that we call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America? semantics, I suppose, but that does lead into his entire Make America Great Again. I think, really, without going too deep down any of these things, I think really what you're going to start to see is you're going to see all the countries are going to make investments into the U.S. because they have to. Maybe not China, but let's say there was, I talked about this a lot, let's say he did put a 60% tariff on China. China's got so much margin that all China would do is cut their margin down to become competitive. I don't know if they could do that at 60%, but 25 they definitely could. So nothing would really change, which would make it more efficient, like trade, and it would definitely maybe balance out that trade deficit. But I don't like that Trump is, it seems like he's switching gears a little bit on the tariffs in China, and maybe that's because of pressure, like you were mentioning, listen, no one wants goods to go up. Like for me, this is a selfish thing to say, but because I can afford to pay more for goods and because I really want a better world and a better economy for my daughter, I'd be willing to give today to get tomorrow.
That's a huge point, because they did a study on delayed gratification, investing a little bit now in order to get a huge payoff later. And I think that if more Americans were able to learn about this particular premise, think about how much faster we would progress as a nation. And do you know what I think was one of the best places to find delayed gratification? Whole life insurance policy, guys.
The infinite banking concepts.
Listen, guys, if you are saving money in a traditional bank account, you are doing it all wrong. What is the traditional average savings account?
We just did this. I think it was like 0.43 over 10 years.
0.43.
But they have short-term memory, so that they're all getting 3, 4, maybe a little more than 4%. And they think that's never going to go away, but it's already going away.
So like for a high-yield savings account, you're getting 4%.
Yeah.
With a traditional savings account, it is 0.05%. So you're getting actually less than 1% for your savings account. So if you're looking to save more and be able to spend more, I encourage, Chris and I both encourage you to be able to look into infinite banking, because infinite banking is one of the only tools that allows you to be your own bank. How does that work?
Oh gosh, it's easy. You just change where your money goes first, okay? So instead of
Don't tell me, tell them.
Oh, so, yeah, you all should know this by now, but you just change one thing, and that is where your money goes first, the savings that you're doing. Don't save in a bank. Change where it goes, put it into a specially designed and engineered whole life. And I did preface specially designed and engineered. Once the money goes there, we want to make that money go to work for you. So the insurance policy, if you use the right company and the right design, will allow you to use your money, like you said, save and spend, but not actually take your money out of commission. In other words, if your money in the whole life policy was earning, let's just say 6%, which is about what the dividend crediting rate is for some of the carriers, you're making 6%, and you can use your money at a rate of 5.5%.
Okay.
You're making a 0.5% spread, hypothetically, right? 0.5%. But you just said some savings accounts are only paying 0.5%. Yeah. So now people that are using the infinite banking concept can make that spread. But then once they deploy the capital into something else, like buying a car, paying off debts,
getting a forklift,
buying a forklift, investing in forklifts, lending money on Private Money Club. They all make your money work for you. Then you take the money that they earn, okay, now your money's out there working, but your money never stopped working the first time. So now you're making money twice on the same dollar, and then you recycle and recapture all the money back into the original source. Because you don't want to take this newfound money, this interest and all this recaptured money, and put it back in a bank account. You're going backwards. So you just put it all back in. So you're literally creating an infinite loop. Your money's always going around, and where's it land? In the same place it came from in the beginning, and that same place never stopped earning interest and dividends on an uninterrupted compounding basis.
So a lot of people, they want to take advantage of it. Then they can obviously look in the notes and find a way to get started, book a call with someone from the team. But I feel that in the upcoming years, this will be one of the biggest periods of time that Americans are going to look for additional means to find more income. That's a very big point.
Not just find more income. There's going to be a massive flight to safety. Because, like I said, the millennials, the Gen Zs, so many folks that invest money in the markets have not seen the downside to the markets yet.
Right.
They maybe saw the pandemic, but that was just boom, boom. They've never seen a real recession. I have. I was an advisor through one recession. I was just coming into Wall Street and a business owner through another. I know the impact of what a recession does, and it's not good. So when they see the downside, what they're going to do is they're going to try to seek safety. Preservation of principal. And you're going to see a massive flow out of the markets, and because of that massive flow, the markets are going to go down incredibly fast. There's a lot of economists that are saying we literally could see a 40 to 60% pullback in the market, but it makes perfect sense. The markets have gone up so fast.
Well, be careful how you do that.
That they that they will come down. Yeah, we're not going to touch that. They will come down just as fast, but it will be even escalated because the markets went up fast. They'll come down twice as fast because it's consolidated.
Right, and there's a lot of panic.
Yeah,
There'll be
so
panic, yeah.
NVIDIA starts going down, and then Microsoft and Facebook and all of them, and it just steamrolls. It's like a wicked thing of dominoes, right? It will happen. Mark my words, and a lot of folks that are watching probably don't believe that's possible and think, oh, there's no way, it's just gonna be a minor little correction. Wrong. There's no way under this administration the Fed's just going to start the printing press up again like they did last time.
There's no way.
It's just not going to happen.
It doesn't make sense. I think no matter what side of the spectrum that you're on, it doesn't make sense for the Fed to print more money. Like we have to feel the pain so that we can gain later. We have to feel that, that level sense of, okay, hey, look, this is real. So
we have to go through the pain. That's the only way through this.
Exactly. So I think that there's going to be some industries that are going to be safe havens. What do you feel that some of them are? What are some?
I mean, Philip Morris has always been a good, defensive.
What is Philip Morris? What do they do?
Cigarettes.
Cigarettes.
And alcohol and all those and firearms.
So
the Philip Morris.
I don't agree, and I'm going to tell you why. Do you know that millennials and then Generation Z, which is right after, they were born roughly about 2000, they have never known life without the internet, and then children such as your daughter, who are Generation Alpha, are showing, well, Generation Alpha obviously, but they're showing that they are basically sin-free in a method of speaking. They are doing less drugs, less cigarettes, less alcohol.
Can I just stop you? All of that is correct, and that's a great thing, but who has the majority of the money in the market? Is it the alphas? Is it Gen Z? Is it the millennials?
Yeah.
Maybe the millennials a little bit, but where's the majority of the money concentration?
It's still boomer.
That's right. Boomers, even the silent generation. So the concentration of the capital is the older folks, okay? Because they have the money. They've worked their entire life to this. So again, I agree with what you're saying, but still, the majority of the capital will be finding, safe defensive stocks. And Philip Morris, I love it or hate it, with cigarettes and alcohol and all that. When things fall apart, what do people do?
They get stressed out and
they get stressed out and they smoke more, like a chimney.
And by the way, this is not financial advice. This is just your personal opinion.
My personal opinion, but I've seen it as when I was an advisor. And alcohol, there's no question about it. Plus,
AB Bev, Budweiser,
cheap foods, because when things get tough, we all must eat. So you're gonna find companies that make cheap food. Okay, so that's also under the Philip Morris umbrella. I mean,
really,
I'm not. Believe me, folks, I'm not giving any financial advice. This is not a recommendation, not a suggestion. I'm not buying Philip Morris, and I will not. I'm just saying, in the past, during recessionary periods, that has proved to be a pretty good place. Other defensive stocks, if depending on how things escalate with the U.S. and the talk of World War and things like that. I mean, defense, you could invest in defense. For me, the safe haven in a period of time like right now where interest rates are going down is and always has been Treasury bonds.
Those are so boring, Chris. I don't want to hear about it.
But you know what? It doesn't matter. It's preservation of principle, and we all know it's simple.
Slow down. What the f*** is a Treasury bill? How do I get one, and why is it so cool?
Well, there's Treasury bills and bonds. That's just the duration. So let's just talk. Let's talk. What are they? Okay.
Okay. Cool.
So let's just say you got $1,000, and you go to the United States government. You say, "Hey, United States government, I have $1,000 I would like to lend to you. What can you give me?" And they say, "Okay, we will basically give you an IOU called a Treasury bill or a Treasury bond." And the only difference between the two is the duration. Okay?
So I'm loaning money to the government.
Effectively, you're giving money to the government.
Loaning it because I want it back. I ain't giving it to
and they've never ever defaulted on a single payment or principal payment back.
Okay.
Ever. Never in history.
Okay.
And they won't because they can just print money. But anyway, nonetheless, that's what it is. It's an IOU from the United States government. So why am I saying that? Well, there is really no other safe haven for your capital outside of specially designed whole life in insurance companies, but then Treasury bonds and Treasury bills because they're guaranteed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. That's not enough of a compelling reason for you to want to put money in there because what do they pay? They pay about what you're going to get in a high yield savings. Maybe it's slightly more because how do you think banks pay high yield?
They do. They back it with certain assets.
They buy Treasury bills. Yeah. So they buy a Treasury bill that pays 4.5 and they pay you 4. They make a 50 basis point spread. That's always how it is. But people don't realize that. Okay, they just don't understand that. That's how it works. So like I have a ton of money sitting in T-bills and in treasury bonds because I understand how they work, and it's simple. It's just like this. When interest rates go down, the price of long duration treasury bonds goes up. So how do you buy them? Well, you can buy them at treasurydirect.gov. Again, not investment advice, but that is where you go.
I think you're pretty safe with that because the government's
whatever.
not going to get mad because you're telling them to give them money.
We get nothing from that. They don't pay any commissions to anybody. But treasurydirect.gov, you could buy the bonds direct from the U.S. government. Or what's probably more prevalent is if you got a brokerage at Schwab or some other brokerage, you could just buy an ETF that holds whatever duration you want. So you could find treasury bills, treasury bonds, and you just say, I want treasury bonds that are 25 plus years or 20 years.
I got that.
And then that's what you do.
And just by the way, guys, I didn't forget about you people who are just learning about this stuff. And ETF stands for exchange, put the letters down here, exchange traded fund. What it basically means is that basically like a company manager or a corporation buys a bucket of different stocks and they put them all into one place, and then now you trade off of that bucket of stocks altogether, and bonds and treasury notes and everything like that. So this helps you enter the market and have somebody basically have training wheels, so you don't have to wake up in the middle of the night and say like, oh, part of my portfolio is dropping, what should I do? They manage a lot of the risk and the reward on your behalf. So that's just.
I don't think they manage the risk at all. It's a passive investment. There's no management on an ETF. That's why the fees on ETFs are so much lower than mutual funds. Mutual funds, now you can buy index mutual funds, but a managed mutual fund is going to have a higher fee because you got people managing it, trying to beat the index, which is completely passive. And they haven't really been effective in that. So, any type of growth or managed growth, portfolio, it's hard for them to beat the indexes. So that's why you've seen ETFs go, become mainstream, because the indexes are just the easiest way to go.
I could definitely understand that. But I mean, it's a good way for people to learn.
It is.
It's a good way to help your family get started with learning about finances, because let's face it, in America, no matter what side of the fucking fence that you're on, we don't learn enough about money, but it becomes one of the biggest problems that make the family fall apart. I mean, what the fuck? Like, the divorce rate is usually over finances. So why not? So it's January right now. Have you had your family meeting that plots out what's going to happen for the rest of the year? Like what your family's goals are in terms of finances? Is that something?
We have not yet. We do though, and I have a plan. So I set a plan up last year for 2025 on what direction we're going to go, and it's the same as it was. Plow more money into policies. Build my private banking system, treasury bonds and treasury bills. I'm still buying a lot. I actually just bought some this morning. Bought some 20 plus year treasury bonds because again, when interest rates are going down, the price is going up. I want to capture the next rise. It's literally the safest bet you're going to get right now.
So you mentioned though also that it's 20 years. So does that mean you have to hold on to this treasury bill for 20 years?
Because you could buy it today, sell it tomorrow. There's always a buyer for treasury bonds.
I see. So that's a big point, because a lot of people, myself included, we don't know all of that.
Well, it's important. If you bought it from treasurydirect.gov, you're going to have a harder time unloading it because you actually are owning the bond. That's why I buy ETFs, because it's just I can get in and out. I got a lot more liquidity with that.
Liquid.
Right.
Okay, that's a big thing right there. So,
but I have bought, back when inflation was going up, I bought the inflation-protected bonds, and I bought those direct from Treasury Direct.
Do you remember what your return on those have been so far, roughly?
Well, it started really good. They were 9. I think we're now down around 3 or 4.
Okay.
But I'm at my maturity, so I could sell those anytime.
Well, congratulations, you're a very mature person. All right.
But again, for the general population, they're probably not going to go to treasurydirect.gov and gobble up a bunch of bonds. But the institutions, that's where they're getting it, and then that's where they're building those ETF portfolios. So get with your financial advisor, get with whoever's managing your investments, or just learn how to do it yourself and go on there and research different ETFs that are holding treasury bonds and treasury bills. It's probably the best thing. I mean, people need to be a better steward of their own money. I mean, we have gotten so complacent with our money, and we've given up control of our money to.
But hear me out.
People don't want to learn how to manage their own money.
I think here's a key thing.
It drives me crazy. It's not hard.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. You make it hard.
Emotion is hard.
That's true.
Emotion is hard. We are more likely to make a choice over emotion than logic.
You're right.
You know what I'm saying? So
I think sometimes people just need an investment advisor just to tell them talk them off a cliff.
Yeah, it's true. When I faced my first loss financially in the markets was actually in crypto. 2000, I want to say it wasn't 18, 2016. It was the first market crash. $10,000 gone, right? Remnants left, right? But I said, okay, it's okay. I didn't start with that much, and it's painful. Like it is inherently and physically painful for some people. So I think for people who are worried about avoiding that type of pain, they are going to be risk averse. Risk averse means when you don't want to take risks.
Yeah, I'm risk averse, big time.
And treasury bills, at least, will always maintain their value.
Absolutely.
That's a very big thing. So now, Chris, we're actually going to introduce a new section to the show. Are you ready?
Sure.
Guys, we're going to introduce a new section. It is called It Came from the Comments. All right? So we're going to go, the purpose of this is what we're going to do is we're going to go through Chris's social media and we're going to respond to a few various comments that we see in Chris's social media so that you can learn without having to put your hand up in class.
When he's pulling up these comments, I read these, I watch these, and so many of them are because people literally just don't believe there's a downside. Like they think that putting money in the index is the way to go. They think it's never gonna go down, or they say, oh, I'm investing for the long haul. But emotions, you had mentioned emotions. You could say you're gonna invest for the long haul, but you tell me, or actually I'll tell you, when your portfolio drops 20, 30, 40%, you're not a long-term investor anymore because your emotions get involved and you're clicking the sell button as quick as you can because you can't lose any more. I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand as an advisor. What's the first question?
All right, so first we have a response to, basically Devin did a video talking to Ryan Pineda about how infinite banking works.
Oh, I remember. Devin said his interview with Ryan was better than mine, so that's controversial.
Hey, well, you know what? That Devin dude, he's no good. He's no good.
Oh, stop.
But shout out to Devin Burr. Mr. Burr, what up, though? Really quickly, though, we've got the ambassador saying, you just made the life insurance company the bank. What do you think that means? Like,
well, because you're changing where the money goes. You're not putting it in a traditional bank, and you're taking your savings, you're putting it into a specially designed whole life, effectively giving your money to an insurance company to hold, which if he understood how insurance companies invest money like we do, he would say, that's a really good thing. You want the insurance companies to hold your money because the insurance companies take a long-term approach. They always have guarantees far out into the future, so they need to invest more conservative. Banks, they're the riskiest drivers on the road, man.
Okay.
Like, they are literally, I would say a lot of the banks are driving drunk.
When I see banks, I don't think of them as the most risky people. So how are they super risky? Because
why is it that banks always have to get bailed out every time we go into a recession or an economic slowdown? Like, think about it. Like, look back, even the biggest banks you've ever seen, they had to get bailouts.
Well, no.
Maybe not Bank of America at one point, I think somehow the government kind of had to help them out too and bail them out. But every big bank has been bailed out and given the opportunity to basically survive.
2024, and somebody can look this up. We can kind of make a graphic about this. How many banks got bailed out in 2024 alone, do you think?
Oh gosh, I know of at least 3 or 4, and then Synchrony. Yeah, I think there was 3 or 4 that had to get bailed out, but they didn't even get bailed out.
Bankrupt. I'm sorry,
well, they
bankruptcies.
didn't go bankrupt. They went insolvent, but then they got bought out by other banks.
Right, bankruptcies in 2024. So let's just see what happens. I'm pulling up the stats. We're going to have that. First Republic Bank was
Silicon Valley.
Yeah, Silicon Valley Bank. Let's go ahead. Let's go to our next question. But that was a great answer for that. And I also, just to kind of add this on, let's. I want to hit on one other big point. That big point is this. If you like these videos and you want to see more, make sure you comment, like, and subscribe, and also submit some questions. And as for that bell.
Oh, I missed.
Hit that bell so that you can be notified for all new things, all Chris Naugle and the BYOB Collective. Our next question from the comments is, so just as a preface, you have a video here where an individual is talking about charlatans, people from Charlotte, or Charlottesville, North Carolina, Virginia, and in saying that people should not pay off their debt using their whole life insurance policies. And it says, why wouldn't you just use the dollars going towards premium to pay off existing debt? Instead, you're incurring costs of insurance and other charges to lose a degree of early liquidity and then borrow. So I think that's pretty
that person's right. Yeah, but this person's just looking at the short run.
Okay.
So we've already run the mathematics behind this. So in the short run, yes, it'd be faster, not so much faster, but it'd be just as efficient to use money in a bank to pay off your debts and then recapture the money. We've run that. But what that person's not seeing is the long-term effect of uninterrupted compounding interest. He's focused on the short-term cost of insurance, policy service fees, and commissions in the policy, which you're going to see that impact in the first 3 years.
Okay.
So in the first 3 years, you're certainly better off doing it with a bank bank account by a little bit. But if you do it with the policy, the long-term effect of the compounding interest far outweighs anything you could ever do with a bank account. So this person, I'm not saying they're wrong in doing that. We can show it with the mathematics, but they're taking a short-term approach to a long-term problem.
So here's something to consider. We've already stated that whole life insurance companies, ones that are mutually owned, pay a dividend. Here's some things that a lot of people don't know. You're earning a guaranteed rate of 3.5%.
It never changes. Well, that's one company. Yes.
Yeah, that's at least one company that is guaranteed, that my policy, 3.5, and then on top of that, it pays a dividend. A lot of people.
Yeah, you're at 6.4 dividend crediting rate with your policy.
I'm loving that. I'm loving that more than McDonald's with extra ketchup. Here's the thing, though.
Those fries are expensive at McDonald's.
And they'll kill a man. They'll kill a black man,
yep.
and hurt a white dude too. So here's something to consider, though. By comparison, let's look at value. If you have money inside of a bank account that's not growing in interest, it's like, what the heck? Like you have it there because we're preconditioned to consider all these things. If you've been raised since inception to think about nothing that the only place to store your money is either a bank account or underneath your bed, of course, if you put in something foreign, you're like, this doesn't make sense. So let's just look at it this way. You're getting 3.5% guaranteed interest rate. Yes, there is a cost of insurance, but guess what? Even if you paid for term insurance, you're still going to be paying for insurance either way. It's either 6 in one hand or a much bulkier half dozen in the other. The thing is, you get greater value by using whole life because it combines.
Well, it's renting versus owning. That's the biggest difference. When you buy term insurance, yes, it's cheap. You're renting the insurance. There's a less than 2% chance that death benefit's ever going to be paid out. So the insurance companies know this. So the insurance company's got a 98% plus chance of being profitable with a term policy. Okay. That's a good product right there.
That's a great thing.
The whole life policy, they got a 100% chance that they got to pay that death benefit. So they got to look at it differently, and it's a different approach. So therefore, this term is renting. The whole life is owning. And when you buy a property or you own anything, it builds equity over time.
Exactly.
That's what the policy is doing. That's what the growth of the cash flow is. But you got to take a long-term approach to that.
Exactly.
And the beauty about the infinite banking concept and the specially designed whole life policies is because we design them for high early cash value, you're getting the benefits that a normal whole life that most people know about cannot give you, because there's no cash value in a regular off-the-shelf whole life in the first couple of years.
Nope.
In the specially designed whole lives that we do, there's immediate cash value that's accessible in the first 30 days after you fund your policy. It's a huge difference. Yep. So the whole idea behind the whole life is not the product. I would never tell somebody, hey, if you got a bunch of money, put it into a whole life policy and just leave it sit there. That is not what I'm talking about. But if you put the money in the policy and immediately find somewhere to redeploy that money, you mentioned cars, pay off your car with it, pay off your credit cards with it, lend it out in a first lien position loan. I mean, whatever. It's not this or that, because a lot of people want to say, oh, well, why would I put money in a whole life? I'm surprised you didn't give me that one. Why would I put money in a whole life when I can earn 20-some% in the S&P 500?
Okay.
Okay, that's I get that all the time. Or if it's not that, it's crypto or something else. What that person is doing is they're saying, all right, I would put money in a whole life and I just leave it sit there and I make that, whatever internal rate of return versus putting it in the S&P. Of course it's going to make more in the S&P. But what they fail to realize is it's this and that, not this or that. It's this and that. You put money in the whole life, then you take the money out of the whole life in the form of a loan and you invest it. You're making money twice on the same dollar. Like, you can't do that in a bank account. It doesn't exist.
Here's the cool thing. I love it when Chris gets worked up. People do this all the time with their HELOC. And it's widely accepted.
But the money in the HELOC isn't earning.
But they're getting appreciation in their
house. So it's kind of the same idea.
But people already understand that. But when you tell them, hey, you can do that with your latent cash as well, they're like, well, what are you talking about? So that's, I think, a very key thing there.
It is.
Well, guys, we hope you enjoyed this week's versions of What Now, What Next. My name is St. James.
And I'm Chris Naugle. Thanks for joining us for this special episode of What Now, What's Next. See you on the next one.
Ow!
Hey, and if you like this video, you want to check this one out, 2025. You'll get a good laugh or a good cry. See you on the next one.